The late afternoon sun fell across the road like a dying ember, throwing long shadows that stretched beside Iona Rivers as she walked alone, the dust rising around her bare ankles like small spirits trying to catch her step. Her soft breath trembled with each exhale, and for a moment she wondered if the quiet world around her could hear her heart cracking under the weight of accusations she never earned, never deserved, yet carried like a stone tied to her ribs. She didn't know where she belonged anymore, or where she was meant to stand when every place that once felt like home had turned its back on her, and the thought spiraled through her like a whispered warning she couldn't outrun. Still, she kept moving toward the saloon lights flickering ahead, not knowing the night waiting for her would change the course of her life in ways she couldn't imagine. Inside the saloon, her steps softened as she began her work, wiping tables, serving drinks, cleaning spilled whiskey left behind by rough hands that never thanked her. Clara May and the others whispered every time her shadow passed, the words carrying like barbed thorns that tangled themselves around her lungs, leaving her breath thin and shallow. She tried to keep her eyes low, to remain unnoticed, but nothing she did kept the cruel laughter from chasing her across the room, reminding her of the tribe that cast her out with the same kind of bitterness. It was strange how two worlds so different could wield the same cruelty, and the realization pressed against her heart until she wondered if kindness only lived in her imagination. She was beginning to believe she would never be more than the stories they muttered behind her back, when a gust of cool air swept through the swinging doors and shifted her fate in a direction she didn't see coming. Colton Ryder stepped inside with a slow ease, his boots tapping against the floorboards as if marking time in a world that moved too fast for him. He brushed dust from his hat and looked up, and in that simple moment, his gaze collided with Iona's. Something inside him stilled, the way a river holds its breath when the first snowflake of winter touches its surface. He didn't understand why his chest tightened at the sight of her, nor why her trembling hands made the air around him hum with protectiveness he had never felt before. But when someone across the room laughed at her again, calling her the tribal thief, something sharp flashed behind his eyes. His voice rose above the noise, calm yet cutting. "That's enough." The entire room froze, but Iona felt her heart stumble in her chest, unsure if she should whisper gratitude or disappear into the shadows before someone punished her for inspiring his defense. Later, as the evening slowed and the crowd thinned, Colton watched her from a distance, not with judgment, but with something gentler, something curious. He noticed the way her shoulders seemed always tightened in apology, the way she avoided meeting eyes as if afraid of reading disappointment in every face. He approached her with a quiet step, asking softly if she was all right, and for a moment she considered lying. Instead, she let her truth fall out in broken pieces, the orphanhood, the work she'd done with devotion, the false accusation that stained her name, the humiliation that chased her even here. Each word felt like surrender, like peeling back old bruises in the hope that someone might not flinch at the sight of them this time. Colton didn't look away. He didn't look disgusted. He simply listened as though her pain deserved space. And though she didn't understand it, something fragile inside her loosened just a little, wondering if maybe she wasn't as invisible as she thought. The next morning, Iona walked into the saloon with hesitant steps, her heartbeat tapping unevenly beneath her dress. When she reached the counter, she saw a single yellow prairie flower laid gently across the wood, its soft petals bright against the dim tavern air. She looked around, unsure if this delicate gift truly belonged to her, and her breath caught when she saw Colton watching her from the corner, his hat tipped low but his eyes warm as sunrise. No man had ever given her anything so simple, so kind, and the unexpected beauty of it pressed tears to the edge of her lashes before she could stop them. Each day after, he offered small gestures, walking with her part of the way home, tipping his hat in a quiet hello, waiting outside the saloon just to make sure she wasn't harassed on her way out. But the townspeople watched with narrow eyes, whispering among themselves that a cowboy like him should never waste time on a girl like her. Still, he kept showing up, and she kept wondering what it meant. When Colton finally asked her to come to dinner at his ranch, Ayanna nearly refused out of fear alone. But something in his voice, gentle, steady, tugged at a place in her chest she hadn't touched in years. She accepted. That evening, as she stepped into his warm wooden home, she felt an unfamiliar calm wrap around her shoulders like a soft shawl. The smell of cornbread filled the space, and lamplight glowed across the walls like golden paint. Colton moved about the kitchen with a rare quietness for a man of his stature, and when he set a plate in front of her, he said softly, "You deserve to sit at a table where you're wanted." The words struck her with a force she didn't anticipate, and she pressed her lips together to keep her emotions from spilling over. They spoke long into the night, sharing small pieces of their pasts in hesitant but truthful confessions. And though the world outside remained harsh, in that small lamplit room she felt, for the first time in a long time, like she might belong somewhere. Yet the moment she left his home, she could feel the weight of the world waiting to reclaim her. The harvest festival arrived with music that floated across the evening air like silk ribbons dancing in the wind. Lanterns hung between trees, casting warm glows over families gathered for celebration. Ayanna arrived beside Colton, her heart fluttering in ways she struggled to tame, unsure of how the town would react to seeing her with him so openly. When he reached out a hand and asked her to dance, everything in her wanted to say no, to run, to hide, but she placed her fingers in his and stepped into the circle beneath the lanterns. The music swept around them, and her breath faltered when he pulled her gently against him, whispering, "You're safe with me." For a few wondrous moments it felt true. But then the whispers began, sharp, cruel, venomous. "She's trapping him. Who'd marry a housemaid? A thief trying to catch a cowboy." The words sliced through her confidence like wire through soft cloth, and she felt herself crumbling in his arms. Her throat tightened, her vision blurred, and before Colton could stop her, she fled the circle, her steps trembling as she vanished into the dark edges of the festival. She didn't know he followed her with the same urgency that filled his heart long before he admitted it. Ayanna ran until the lights of the festival faded, stopping only when she reached the riverbank where the moon shimmered over the water like liquid silver. Her breath quivered as she sank to her knees, shoulders shaking with sobs she could no longer hold back. The whispers echoed through her mind, each one dragging her deeper into a place she had spent years trying to climb out of. "Maybe no one in this land wants me," she whispered to the water, her voice nearly breaking under the weight of her despair. She wondered if there was something cursed about her presence, something about her that invited cruelty wherever she went. Her fingers dug into the earth, as if trying to hold on to something real, something stable, but the world seemed determined to slip from beneath her. And as she wept beneath the moonlight, she didn't hear the footsteps that slowed behind her, steady and intentional. Colton approached with careful steps, his breath warm in the cool night air. When he knelt beside her, he said nothing at first, simply letting the sound of the river fill the silence between them until her sobs quieted to trembling breaths. Then he gently lifted her chin, his thumb brushing a tear from her cheek with a tenderness that made her heart jolt. "Ayanna," he whispered, "I've wanted you from the moment I saw you." She blinked through the blur of tears, unsure if she had heard him right. He continued, voice steady, "Not because I pity you, not because I see you as broken, but because I see strength in you, real strength, and a kindness this world doesn't deserve." Ayanna's breath hitched, her heart shuddering with disbelief. "Why would you choose someone like me?" she asked, her voice fragile as thin ice. He leaned closer, his eyes soft. "Because you are the woman I've waited for, even when I didn't know I was waiting." The moonlight wrapped around them like a vow, leaving her trembling with hope she wasn't sure she had the right to hold. In the quiet days that followed, Colton's affection grew like a steady flame that warmed every shadow inside her chest. When he finally stood before her with a small silver ring in his hand, her breath froze in her throat. "Ayanna," he said softly, "if you'll walk beside me, I'll spend my life proving that you belong in this world." Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded, and the way his shoulders eased told her he had feared she might yet slip away. Their wedding was small, held inside a little church where soft light pooled through stained glass and painted the floor in hues of rose and gold. Ayanna wore wildflowers in her hair, each petal trembling gently as she walked toward him. When they spoke their vows, she felt something within her mend, something she never believed could be repaired. As they stepped out of the church afterward, sunlight washed across her face, and for the first time she lifted her chin toward it, letting herself feel worthy of its warmth. Yet a whisper of curiosity flickered inside her, wondering if this newfound peace could survive the past that had followed her for so long. Life on Colton's ranch unfolded with a sweetness she had never expected to touch. In the early mornings, they shared quiet breakfasts by the window, sunlight settling softly on the wooden table. In the evenings, they rode horses across open fields until dusk wrapped itself around the land like a velvet blanket. At night, they cooked together, laughter and soft touches filling the small kitchen in ways that felt like healing. Colton kissed her forehead when the world felt heavy, and Ayanna held his hands when he came home tired from the ranch. Slowly, she began to feel her heart steadying, discovering a rhythm of happiness she didn't think she deserved. Yet sometimes, she caught herself wondering if shadows from her past would come knocking again, trying to reclaim her peace. The day Sheriff Boone rode up to their ranch, Ayanna felt a familiar coldness coil inside her stomach. But his expression was not stern, only solemn with a hint of relief. He told her that someone from her old tribe had finally confessed to the theft, clearing her name of every accusation. The truth washed over her like a warm tide, carrying away years of shame she hadn't realized she still held so tightly. The townspeople came over the next few days, offering apologies wrapped in awkwardness and regret, their voices soft as if afraid she might reject them. Ayanna listened with a calm she could hardly believe belonged to her. She forgave them, not for their sake but for her own freedom. As Colton stood beside her, pride glowing behind his gentle gaze, she felt a strength bloom inside her that she hadn't known she was capable of holding. Later, as the sun dipped low and painted the fields in amber light, Ayanna stepped onto the porch and looked out across the world that had once rejected her. She breathed in the scent of earth and warm air, letting the quiet settle around her shoulders like a soft shawl. "Maybe no one wanted me before," she whispered to the horizon, "but now I've learned to want myself." She felt Colton wrap his arms around her from behind, his chin settling against her shoulder as if he had always been meant to rest there. She closed her eyes, letting herself feel chosen, cherished, and finally at home in a world that once felt too sharp to touch. And as the evening breeze brushed past them, carrying the faint echo of her old loneliness away, she wondered what new chapters might unfold now that she had finally claimed her place in this land. And perhaps, dear reader, in Ayanna's journey you can feel the echoes of your own heart, how the world may turn away, how cruel whispers can pierce deeper than any storm, yet still, there is a place where you are needed, a soul that sees you, and a life waiting for the courage to claim it. Know this: the fiercest battles are not fought with fists or fire, but within the quiet chambers of your own spirit, in the tender act of believing you are worthy. And when you do, when you let yourself be seen, truly seen, the world itself seems to bend toward your light, softening around you, and for the first time, you may breathe freely, knowing that you, too, are home.